Recording in progress.
Shouldn't it be like 3, 2, 1? I wasn't ready. I just jumped on you like that.
Yeah, I know. I get that in the middle of conversation, like where people will be talking to me. Recording in progress. It's like, okay.
Such an aggressive voice.
I know.
Can we get, excuse me, I would like to make an announcement. Recording is in progress. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Or act like no one's listening and just escalate until she has to like, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. So my cat passed away this weekend. It was really sick. Recording in progress.
I don't give a shit. Damn.
You're being recorded, asshole.
That technology would sell. I'm sure it's like there's a restaurant where you go to get abused by the waitstaff.
Yeah, that's right.
I forget what that's called.
Ed DeBevics. At least that was the one in Hollywood.
Oh, avoid that because that sounds horrible.
Yeah, even the name is like hard to say. Ed DeBevics. I don't. Is it like Edward? Is that Edward or is it Ed?
It sounds like an Bevics. It sounds like an accident. Like someone stuttered and they didn't want to admit that they stumbled over the words.
Yes.
Like, yes, that's what I meant to say.
That's totally what I said. I said that. Yeah. Recording in progress.
Okay, since recording is in progress, welcome to My Modern Myth. I'm Eric. That is Adam. And today we're going to be talking about, let's think about it. We should talk about daily heroic action. That's what I've been thinking a lot about. And a lot of changes to the framework that's not a change, it's a focusing. I think the idea of being the hero of your everyday life, your story has been a big focus of mine for years. And I'm getting a lot more clarity on what that means practically. And I'm hearing as I do so, more voices come out in ways that refute that in some way, where it's like your life isn't a story. It's not a hero's journey. And I kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit and kind of some of the changes that I'm making and doubling down in areas. And really that doubling down is a hyper focusing. And when you get your energy focused in one spot, then you can produce some heat and you can create some momentum. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think focus is really important on that aspect too, because I just got back from a mastermind and that was one of the themes that came up during that mastermind. This was a GoBundance event in Vermont. Vermont. And I think that's how you pronounce it because it's really close to Canada. I didn't realize how close Vermont was to Canada because my sense of direction on the East Coast is like so obscured.
Sure.
Like I was in Orlando the first part of last week, and then I was in Vermont. So I was the only idiot that took his skis to Orlando. Talk about a hero's journey. But that was a fun Uber ride with the questions I was getting. What are those things? Like, skis. You never heard of skis in Orlando? I mean, anyway. But no, so I went to Vermont, and it's really close to Canada, which I was like 2 hours away from Montreal. And so they had mayonnaise for your French fries. And I was like, what is this magic?
Boom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's bougie.
Anyway, so hero's journey.
Well, I do want to talk about mayonnaise and French fries because that is glorious. And I only discovered it because I ran out of ketchup. And I was like, I don't eat French fries because I like French fries. Yeah. I like that they're an edible delivery system for a sauce.
Yeah, you're not a heathen. You're not going to eat them dry. That's oh, yikes.
Talk about
almost had to end this call.
Talk about self-development.
Right. But mayonnaise on French fries. That's the topic today? We're going with that?
Yeah, that and a chicken as well. I've had it on chicken and it's quite glorious. Like a chicken tender.
Mayonnaise chicken. Okay. That's my band name too. My next band name, Mayonnaise Chicken.
Kind of a ska punk.
Deal. That'll work. Yeah. We do a lot of good more like on the reggae kind of front stuff, but it's good.
I like it.
So so at this mastermind, by the way, where I discovered that mayonnaise goes great with French fries.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of talk of focus and why focus is, one of the things we miss a lot because as people who want to achieve things, if you aspire to do something, chances are you don't just aspire to do something, you aspire to do a lot of things. And when you start to actually achieve things, more opportunities come to you and you get into these seasons of like, where your season of yes, where you're just like saying yes all the time to all these things because that's what you want to do. eventually it turns into like this season of like, I got to stop saying yes to all this stuff and just focus. And it's really hard. It's not easy. I mean, it's hard to like stop behaving in a way that you are accustomed to behaving because it gets scary to just like stop like trying to find all these things and just focus on one thing. But it also means that you're kind of putting your chips all into one basket.
Yeah.
That's not a thing, but eggs into one basket. Chips
I
into chicks.
wouldn't question.
Chips.
Maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, chips go into baskets in
Crisps
Canada.
and chips and
Hmm.
British.
Yeah,
Anyway,
right. Right.
so when we're on a hero's journey and we lose focus, it's because we have this ability to wander a bit off that path, but we can't always do the thing that we wander off and get our eye caught by. But if we can find the alignment and mission that we are driven this way, if I'm going on my path and I see jujitsu and I get into that, that's in line with mind body story. It's
Hmm.
not necessarily what I'm doing to coach people, but it is part of that. It's also part of my service to myself, which I am trying to figure out how to get back into, well, and have it be good for my body because I miss it a lot.
Yeah.
And so there are those things that you put in your life. But if I start animating this project, if I start making movies over here, if I start coaching here, if I redesign my website here, if all of these things can pull me too far because I'm doing all of them at the same time, even though they might be for my best good. There is a time and a place for all those things, and we have to get to our mission first and
Hmm.
have these things set in the margin to, on our return from that, it's now our next quest. It's our next adventure, and we have the problem and the time to solve those problems. I have been in that process of iteration for years, and every time I do get closer to understanding. And I had my first client the other day on this hero's journey conversation. Like this is a actual process and a framework I'm building in the daily heroic, and it's going to look different for everybody because
Hmm.
there's many stories. They all roughly tell the same story and or same stories in the same way. I mean, you look at a movie and the argument is your life isn't a movie. Well, yeah, because a movie is the compression of your entire life into 90 minutes. And also, the elements of a story we can pull out of it do apply to moments, benign moments.
Hmm.
Overcoming a difficulty is a hero's journey. Whatever you're not doing that you need to do, whatever you're not facing that you need to face is a hero's journey. It's a call to adventure that you're refusing. And that is the start of a hero's journey. And when we think of it that way, and when I think of it that way, it empowers me to say, who am I playing in my life story? I've been a bystander for most of it. I've been a victim for most of it. And that's my choosing.
Yeah.
And that's where it's tough. No one wants to say I chose to be a victim. Like I didn't choose to be victimized. Nobody chooses to be victimized, but we
Right.
do choose to stay and be a victim. We do choose and stay to be an accuser or a martyr or any of the masks that we wear. And it's imperative for us to all understand what masks we're wearing, what role we're playing, and decide which one we want to.
Hmm.
And the hero, the word hero has bothered me for years, and a lot of veterans are the same because what we call heroic is surviving the worst day of your life. It's coming
Hmm.
out on top when you easily couldn't have. But yes, there was heroic action in pushing forward sometimes. Sometimes it's blind luck. It really is. And it only happened once or twice in your life at most.
Yeah.
And then if the rest of your life you're comparing heroics to the one moment out of the 80 years that you lived, you're always going to fall short. And I don't like that because that's not the defining moment of your story. It's an impact moment. And
Hmm.
we have so many impact moments, and we need to honor those. And also, in my storytelling, when I talk about my traumas, it's not really anymore a deep, like, I'm going to take you to where I was, because that has become almost sexy to talk about the worst experience of your life and just
Yes.
pull the heart. And what I've realized it does, because I did this, I realized it makes people do two things. One, at best, go, wow, that's some story. Well, back to my life.
Yep.
Nothing changed. Two, I never went through anything like that. So there's no reason that I should even feel the way I feel. I'm almost embarrassed to ask Eric for help.
Hmm.
And then they go on with their life in misery. A hero looks at adversity and discomfort and says, I must go there. And they must go because they go where they must, not where they want to. Those three things define the hero if you are or aren't being it in your life. And that is something we face every single day.
It's a great, great observation. And I'm curious to know for heroism, do you feel that heroism really just comes from how we respond to the situations we're faced with?
Yeah,
Is that really it? Because I mean, the idea that you mentioned that there it could be luck, it could be just or it could be perceived as luck. It could be because we're forced into that situation because you're in a firefight in Iraq and you have to pick up a gun and shoot because that's your life or
sure.
death. But is it how we respond in those situations that, I mean, and not just the firefight in Iraq, but in the, I don't know, the hamburger line at Carl's Jr.
Shooting people in Carl's Jr.
Yeah, well,
versus that's very different. There
right,
is heroics, I suppose, in
sure.
defending Carl's Jr.
I mean, it depends on what burger you get, but yeah,
Did you not dip your French fries in anything?
yeah,
There's heroics.
that's right. Yeah.
The in Iraq, I can tell you the difficulty in that is because you really do have a defining moment. In
Mhm.
a Carl's Jr., there's some conflict in the line. You have to decide if you're going to interject yourself into this conflict or if you're going to let it kind of diminish. Are you escalating? Are you de-escalating? There's all those conversations that could come up. But in a wartime situation, it's very black and white. This is violence. This is death. What are you going to do? And what I found there was there wasn't a conscious decision for me. There was
Hmm.
only action. I had no, okay, should I do this? No, it was I did it. I went, I
Yeah.
grabbed, I did it. I felt all the fear. I felt all the rush of emotion and adrenaline. I just did it. There was no option in my head that said maybe hide. But there were people who hid under trucks. There were people who went and hid in the showers that we built. And
Hmm.
we ran past those people and said, the fight's out here.
Yeah.
So I don't know their experience, but I do know when I came home, people would say I could never do what you did. And I would always be like, have you ever tried?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in that situation? Well, no. Well, you can't know. It's impossible because that's high level intensity that
Hmm.
most 99.99999% of people will never experience. That's becoming
Right.
our number, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
start
It's just
looking at the finite value and saying it's everybody.
right. Yeah, and that's I fall into that camp too, where I'm guilty of like of expressing that like, oh, I could have never done that. And I hear that, now as it relates to things that I have done, like,
Mm,
oh, the
mhm.
situations or whatever. But it's that's a really good point, and I like the way that you shake that. It's just like, well, if you're thrown into that situation, it's really in that situation where it defines like kind of how you're going to respond. I interviewed today uh, a woman who was an Air Force pilot in Iraq, actually, and she got shot down, or no, she didn't get shot down. She got hit by anti-aircraft fire. She was in one of those A-10 Warthogs, I think that were, and so she lost all her hydraulics, and she had to basically manually try to fight the plane
Mm.
to a thing. And she was talking about that experience kind of matter of factly, and it was it was in my head as I'm going through that and not having not experienced it or not experienced what you've gone through. It is kind of like one of those things of, oh, I don't have that experience, so I don't understand it, so my assumption is I could never do that. But I, in trying to put ourselves in that shoe, how do we, I guess, if we feel like we haven't gone through something quote unquote heroic, or we feel like we're victims of our circumstances and we just don't have that courage, how do we redefine ourselves into the heroes that we need to be in those situations?
Yeah, you have to make the battle much smaller than you think it needs to be.
Mm.
That's an acceptance. It's a redefinition of what you define as a hero for yourself. This is not something when I promote this message, it's not me saying you're wrong about what heroics are. No, I'm
Yeah.
saying we all have a personal metaphor. And I think finding the personal metaphor that guides your path is super vital. And one that I use is that of the hero, of the hero's journey. And when I bring that into my life, man, my hero's journey right now looks like refiguring out the cooking thing
Hmm.
and homeschooling. Like that's
Yeah.
it's not for me to go online and be like, I'm a hero of the home. I'm a home hero. I will never tell people unless I'm explaining my framework. the ways that I'm a hero every single day of my life.
Right.
It's an ideal to strive for. And like I said, all it is finding where you meet resistance, where you find discomfort and you resist it, where you choose comfort over the discomfort, where you choose something you want to do over something you know you need to do, and just totally shirk it off and go off and do this thing. I still do that today. I still find myself watching a video or something because I don't want to go and figure this thing I failed at. I don't want to go have the conflict with my spouse. Every time I do that, I'm becoming a bystander in the story. I'm sneaking away from my responsibility and I'm hiding in the background.
Yeah.
So if I take that focus and say, I just have to find something uncomfortable right now that I'm not doing that I need to do because I'm a man or you're a woman who knows what they need to do. Because I think every single one of us knows what we
Hmm.
need to do at any given moment in time. We confuse ourselves and it gets foggy up here because we're trying to protect ourselves from that reality that we are
Yeah.
the ones that can seek the path, that we are the ones that can find and know innately. That's what we do, Adam, is we try to help people clear that fog. That's
Yeah.
what this work is. And so when we can do that and you have the aha moment, that's the call to adventure saying, I can do this. That's where the hero becomes a hero instead of who they used to be. It's going from what they know to what they don't know. The known world to the unknown world is the hero's journey. I don't know
Yeah.
cooking. I don't know how to make it work in this phase of life. And the last time I tried it, it didn't work after a certain point because I got too many groceries piling up in the thing and it was a delivery service. Now I'm doing real groceries, which is
Hmm.
actually the benefit of learning somewhere and being like, okay, that's not working anymore. So I have to figure out the new iteration of what this looks like in my life. That's an unknown world for me again.
Yeah.
But I do know because the way is known, because heroes have pathed this way before. I have already walked that path. I know I'll be playing music and I know I'll be dancing and singing when I cook because every
Yes.
time we do something, every hero's journey leads to gold that you bring back into your kingdom, which is your life. No, I'm not looking at my wife like my queen. That doesn't do anything for me. This isn't my kingdom. It's just a word that means my
Right.
life.
Right.
And so I have that treasure. I bring it back and it impacts my family in positive ways. The rest of the world might judge and say it doesn't, but it doesn't matter because I know I live my life. I know the adversity I face. I don't have to share it with everybody. I have to know it. And if I can do that on a small scale, making my bed, cooking, cleaning, simple stuff, it could be bigger than that. It could be saying you want to raise at work, but the first thing you have to do is really understand, is this what I need and this is what I have to do? Or is it something I just want? Because we don't
Right.
always go, of course, who wouldn't want more money? But
Right.
understanding with more money comes more responsibility. Are you ready for that responsibility? Because someone explained if you get $1 million, you have to pay 40,000 in taxes. Can you, is that okay with you? Are you going to freak out about that? Because a lot of people get $1 million and be like, I have to give how much away to the government? And they were accusing the rich of being greedy and stuff. And all of a sudden they get the money and it's like, ooh, I don't want to, ooh, this hurts. So how are you going to be a steward of that responsibility? And until you're ready for that, you can't fully understand if you're wanting something or this is where you need to go. And that is also part of that call to action.
Yeah. 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 And I think that that's where community helps. Like you and I having this friendship
Mm-hmm.
is being able to clear that fog when we're living in it, those moments of like,
Yeah.
me and just say it's me in a career that where I'm just like, I don't know what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this fog or you're in the fog of like, I don't, of groceries and all this kind of stuff. It's like, that's where we can lean on other people that might have the expertise or whatever that might be to help and just clear that fog a little bit. Trustworthy community people that will show you the path on the hero's journey. That's what I believe. That's part of that hero's journey is
Yeah.
having a guide, right?
It is.
You know.
Yeah, there's three. You're promised three things on the hero's journey. One is allies, you and
Yeah,
me. Elder wisdom. So this is where you have that guru or whatever you want to call that person that just knows and can clear that fog in that
I
way.
want to call him Steve. Yeah,
Steve the guru, the elder. I don't like the elder part, because it makes it sound old, but they don't have to be old. A lot of
yeah,
times they are because they've lived a little bit of life. And
right.
then the last is supernatural aid. This is God. This is spirit. This is synchronicity. This is coincidence, serendipity. It's all of those things that are blessings to say you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing. It might not be forever, but it is for now. So all of those things will be provided to the hero on their journey, and that is true. I experience it still, and I still am grateful every time, and I laugh. It's a gratitude of laughter where I go, of course, of
Right.
course, this teacher is a drummer and a really good one, and I'm a drummer. Or it's simple things like that. It's not like, oh, this man is levitating. No, it's just little universal God nods. I like to call them little
God
winks.
nods.
Yeah,
That's my
God
next
nods.
band name, by the way. Yeah.
Man, you've moved on from mayonnaise French fry or whatever it
Man,
was.
yeah, mayonnaise French fries. No, mayonnaise. Yeah, it was mayonnaise French fries. I don't know what
My
it
bad.
was. It's old. It's so last
Oh, it was
week.
chicken
Yeah.
tenders, chicken tender, I
Oh,
don't know, tender
chicken tender
mayonnaise.
mayonnaise.
Tender
Tender
mayonnaise
mayonnaise.
is, I mean, it's kind of a
Tender
oxymoron or what was it?
mayonnaise. Tender mayonnaise. That's the band name. That's the band name.
Nailed it. Hero's journey complete.
Yeah, I think that the whole point here is that like, and what I'm hearing and what I totally agree with is that right now it feels sexy to be a victim, to live in victimhood because you're getting a lot of attention, you're getting like
Hmm.
a lot of that. B, the hero's journey is worth it, and it's hard. But you know, and kind of moving through that victimhood, finding like a path out of it, not sitting in it, because you might get like the in that victim mentality that you might be feeling in now, you may be getting the feedback or the reinforcement or some kind of positive feedback
Hmm.
uh, to that, but you're not. It's not sustainable. It's not authentic. It's not bringing you forward towards growth. So you're actually creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where that victimhood is leading back to your life getting your world getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And again, to Eric's point, it's not about you know it's not saying or denying that you have been victimized in some way. You know, you may have you may have very brutally, very horribly, very traumatically, but I think the point is that owning that or letting that become part of you or being that, living in it, that's the choice. And that's a choice you can make to actually go beyond and grow through it, which is, you know, something that I know both Eric and I have both done.
Yeah. And it's not to say either that wearing a mask isn't functional. I think whenever we wear the mask of accuser, victim, or martyr, which is anything that's not the hero, it serves a purpose. I mean, sometimes it's a survival mask, but every mask, every piece of armor is meant to be taken off. And that's where we go wrong is we never do because the masks still provide us something. You know, the victim is provided reasons why they should never hope for anything.
Yeah.
Victims are where hope goes to die because if they hope for something, they might again get hurt, but they're hurt anyway. So they have no ability to change their situation and they're allowed to then accept the reality that is pain. The accuser is the active victim and they get to blame and they get to feel powerful. They get to feel strong
Mhm.
because I'm still a victim. I have no hope, but they just accuse, and it's my boss, and my boss is an idiot. And like, you don't even know your boss. I
Right.
guarantee you, you know nothing about his or her life, but he is
Mhm.
or she is the problem. And the reason that you're unhappy at home, mind you, is his and her fault because
Yeah.
you're unhappy at home. Everything is somebody else's problem. It could be car manufacturers because you got a flat tire. You know, it's never you were driving on the side of the road because you were pissed off and wanted to drive around someone who was driving slow. It's never your fault. And the
Yeah.
martyr, that's a tricky one because that looks good because you're just so self-sacrificial. But what you're doing is you're sacrificing your need to experience emotions that hurt so that other people don't experience that discomfort. So you absorb that, but you're absorbing something that's not yours to hold. And in so doing, you're denying the experience you need to have. I'll be a martyr with my kids. I'll never make them do a chore because the
Yeah.
pain of doing chores is so great and they'll be unhappy. And so what do? I'm robbing them of an opportunity to grow. And I'm also sparing myself the feeling of watching them get mad at me for pushing them into a direction they don't want to go.
Yeah.
That's a cop out. That's not growth. It's not love, but it looks like it because I'll take the burden so that you don't have to, my child. Well, no, you
Hmm.
just don't want to feel the pain and the reality that you've hurt somebody or you perceive that you might be the problem or you're not embracing reality as the martyr. You're just slowly dying in silence.
It's a sad way to kind of go through, and I've been there. I mean, that was kind of my flavor for doing it because it's like,
Mm,
well, I know that I can suffer, in
Yeah.
silence because I've been there. It's the discomfort I know. So I can do that.
Hmm.
But I also hate to see everybody else because of the way I grew up or whatever that I was shamed or guilted because I made people feel bad or whatever. Even though it wasn't my feelings or whatever, but that was kind of like the alternative. Like, well, I'll just take the feeling bad, and I'm not going to make anyone else feel bad. I'll sit with it,
Hmm.
and that doesn't end well.
No.
There's a ton of resentment that
Hmm.
pops up in that. And resentment is the kinds of thing resentment is one of the worst offenders that comes when it comes to like addiction or alcoholism or things like that, because you develop so much resentment. It's just so painful. It's holding so much in that you're just suppressing it. You're pushing it down. You're numbing it with whatever addiction you have. And in the process, you're hurting the people that you were trying to avoid hurting in the first place by just hurting yourself.
Yeah.
It's like a carpet bomb of just pain
Hmm.
coming out of that. Like it's just finding that that freedom beyond it, of honesty, of having those conversations, of actually moving beyond, yourself, which, martyrdom, it is a bit of a selfish pursuit, right? It's self-centered, but getting beyond that self-centeredness and moving to find truth,
Hmm.
curiosity to find truth.
Yeah.
That's the path to healing,
Hmm.
a path
And
to healing.
it is. And martyrs are just manipulated servants.
Hmm.
We need to serve, So it's not that you can't have these ideals. An accuser is a manipulated, assertive person. Like we need that. A victim is a manipulated, compassionate person. These are wonderful traits, but they become toxic when they're used for their shadow side. So you need to be compassionate, you need to be assertive, and you need to serve. These are all things we need, but they're the reverse side of the mask. And when you experience these things, you're experiencing conversation and resentment built by someone who else was wearing a mask.
Yeah.
This is, but how many times have you ever thought that everyone else is healthy and balanced except for me? So my experience is like, oh, you're right, I'm the bad one. Have you ever felt
Right.
that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't stop. I mean, it still happens. You get to those points. There's seasons in life where there's never an end point to it. You keep doing the work to get through it.
Yep.
I mean, so you feel oh, I figured this out about myself. I have this problem where I'm too much of a people pleaser, so I take things on for myself and I don't like address things. So I figured that out and I've solved it in this area. So it's solved. I'm cured, but it's
Yep.
not because it happens elsewhere. It starts to creep in. You have that level of creep that happens in your life of these little things. I was talking about it today on my solo podcast where I was talking about my sobriety and this idea that I have no desire to drink anymore, which is amazing. God's grace, amazing. Like I don't have a desire to drink anymore, and I think that I actually have come to the view that alcohol really doesn't serve any purpose in this world.
Yeah.
It's just not good. It frankly isn't. But there's other ways that addiction creeps in. It just creeps in other ways,
Sure.
It creeps in like, my obsessive thoughts on things that I shouldn't be thinking about, getting away from the focus that I need to focus on. I feel like that's an important part of the hero's journey that we need to embrace as a real part, because without that challenge, without that adversary within us, we can't become a hero. We have to have that push and pull. We have to have that internal conflict, and and I think it's an important part. So embracing it, but also trying to rise above it, to dance with it in the right way, lead the dance.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I agree that internal external conversation too. That's what I like about. I use a lot of cinema and storytelling, story writing, story craft terms in my own coaching. And
Hmm.
so, if you set the scene, the first scene is it's always interior, exterior. Those are the two options you have to start the scene. It's EXT, uh, farmhouse, day, night, continuous, whatever, but you always set the tone of like this is happening inside, this is happening outside. And so when we have that conflict, when you're talking about adversaries, is the adversary inside myself or is it outside myself? That's the perfect place to start any quest, any hero's journey. Is
Hmm.
this an outside or an inside problem? And you have to be really honest with yourself. And that's why exercise is so important, because a lot of times you don't know where the enemy lives until you go train.
Mm.
I mean, you're talking about isolation. What was Iron Man triathlon? It was
Yeah.
suffering in silence for hours,
Yeah.
and a lot of conversations come up. And you also talked about, and a lot of people talk about, you trade one addiction for another. You stop drinking, you do triathlon obsessively. Okay, then you're talking about that got you to a certain point, but I have to deal with obsession. Like, I have an obsessive personality. I have one of those too. So how do you, and one way of looking at it is you slay a dragon, right? And another is some dragons you can't slay, some you got to ride. You
Yeah.
have to tame these things and ride it. But you have to steer it in a direction that is,
Yeehaw!
yeah, right. Ride that dragon, spraying mayonnaise across the village. I don't know where the
That's a
mayonnaise is
drop.
coming from, but no questions. It's fine. But the last thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up was the fog of war. We talked about fog in the brain, and there's a term called fog of war in a war, which is from all the cannons and the fire, the gunpowder. Doesn't happen so much now, but eventually the battlefield was so congested you couldn't even really see who the enemy was from who the good person was. So it kind of was chaotic, and I think there was probably a lot of fratricide back a long time ago. But when the fog of war clears, you can assess the damage. The fun part of this conversation that it brought a memory up was, you remember the first Warcraft,
Oh yeah, yeah. World of
where
Warcraft. Yeah.
you start off with like an orc or whatever, and everything else is a fog. It's the fog of war. Unless you
Hmm.
had the cheat code that was like fog of war and it took all of it away. But there's this expansive map that you don't know anything about. All you know is there's a few trees here, there's a rock here, and I've got 3 guys to build a village. I have no idea how close the enemy is. There could be
Hmm.
a huge army marching on your camp, and you've only built a couple of infantry stables, and you're
Yeah.
screwed. Unless you go out to the fog and you start to expand. And every time you go a little further, you remove the fog of war in that area. And as you keep going, your ability to survey the map that is your world gets bigger and bigger, and you build assets here. You train your soldiers here. You then get parties that can go explore up here, because now you're getting stronger, and you can go to those places that you were afraid to go because you have a team. And sometimes that team is an ally, sometimes that team is resilience that you've built in yourself. It's your coping strategies. It's the healthy metrics that keep you in line. And now you're exploring the map. And the more of your world that is known, the more further you can explore in confidence. It doesn't take the fog of war ever away completely, because adversaries are out there and you're going to find them,
Yeah.
but you'll be more prepared to take them because of all of the adventures you've gone on up until this point.
I feel like we face that fog in a variety of places in our lives. And we add to it by just adding the fog to our own minds too, like in
Mm-hmm.
our own situations. It's almost like we are sitting in this camp with the fog around us, and we have a fog machine that we're spraying like around in our camp. So like to not expand our visibility, but to just kind of like cut ourselves off from it,
Yeah.
and keep ourselves in that fear of what's beyond it and what's in the unknown. But yeah, that kind of stuff takes courage, and courage is part of the journey.
Yeah. Daily heroics. It's venturing into the fog just a little bit
Hmm.
and learning
Yeah.
what's out there, but never doing it fully alone. A lot more to talk about there, but that's kind of the direction of the focus, the hyper focusing in on the stuff I'm writing and building, and the cards that I'm drawing are all hero's journey. It's all daily heroic. How can you be a hero today in your story?
Yeah.
If is the story you're writing one you want to be writing with your life, or is it someone else is writing it for you and you're like, hey, I want to have
Yeah.
some say in this thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
you become rich. It doesn't mean you become famous. It means you take control of your life. My kids might want, like right now, they said, I would just be happy to, even if it was like a farm, like just to have a hobby farm where I make enough to live and I get to be on the land. I'm like, I'll support that. You don't have to make it. Used to be, our parents came from the Depression, our
Hmm.
grandparents, and their parents
My
wanted them to
parents
have a,
caused my depression, by
it's like, I was
the
getting to that. So
way.
we were rescued from the depression only to get depression from our parents.
Right.
It became the I want my child to have more than I did when I was a kid. That
Hmm.
started in the depression, and that escalated and escalated, and it gets today where I have more money, I think, than my parents did. I think we're doing financially better. We're in a better place, near the lake. All these wonderful things that we've amassed, big house and things. And my children sometimes miss the small house where we could barely pay the bills, where it was
Hmm.
month to month because we were close together. We were
Yeah.
tight. If you work and you make more money, that comes at a cost. Absolutely. And you have to accept that. So then the parents want their kids to do even better. What do you want? I want you to be a millionaire now. I need you to go to the best schools. I need you to study constantly. I need you to go to 3 or 4 sports so you can get into the best school. Did they want that? Or would they be happy making medium income half of what you made? But now they're, I don't know.
Right.
But the better for our kids, the way I see it, is not a financial thing anymore. It's an ability to leave the house without as much baggage as we did when we were kids. So they had a little bit more ownership on crafting the story of their life so they can more authentically go in. This is the natural progression. And I think we're at that tipping point. We finally are hitting it for a lot of people that we can. Well, is public school the best for you? Is homeschooling the best for you? Is college what you need to do? What do you want to do? And have those conversations with a lot more freedom, with a lot
Hmm.
more ability to take them on. And it's still challenging, but I
Yeah.
think that's the next iteration of I want my kids to have it better than I did when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. To be happier,
Yeah, to
not
be
to have
happier.
more.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's this idea of more, like we need more to be
Yeah,
happy, but we don't. I mean, take it from people who have, like, if you look at the people who have the most in the world, do they look any happier than the people who have the least?
right.
Abundance comes from within, and if we could teach that, there's an abundance of abundance that we can have.
Boom.
Yep. Yep.
Now there's a mic drop moment. All right.
That's
Well,
the sound of mic drop.
we can't drop these. They're kind of expensive.
Yeah,
I
it's like
saved up a lot for this. Ooh, we love you. Ooh. Well, that'll do it for this episode. And until next time, journey well, my friends. Zippity pop pop dip pop.